Bozo is probably the most successful in this regard, as he helped to co-write another film starring this one's main hero, Billy Blanks, called Tough and Deadly. A film I will get to in time, don't you worry about that. "1995's Tough and Deadly has got to be one of the oldest reviews that I've ever teased for this channel. Honestly, I just kind of forgot about it. Gotta love ADHD. But with this being the 5th anniversary season, we're setting things right. And that means crossing off a review that I said I'd get round to nearly 4 years ago. Tough and Deadly is a buddy action movie at heart, with just a dash of martial arts sprinkled in for good measure. Starring Billy Blanks and Roddy Piper, both of whom seemingly were clearly done with this crap by this point in their careers. In fact, Piper even gave an interview not too long after this film was released where he basically admitted that he wanted to quit acting because he'd taken too many acting classes and got too involved, and that he was just kind of done with it by this point. And what's surprising about that interview is, had he not said anything at all, I really wouldn't have guessed based on his performance here that he was over it. The film opens with Blanks as, okay, this is a bit difficult. Because Blanks' character has multiple names throughout the film, some of which are quite spoilery, for now, we'll just call him by his code name, Quicksilver. Quicksilver is attending a meeting with a seemingly quite important person. The meeting looks to be going well when, out of nowhere, a group of stealth CIA agents raid the mansion, killing everyone except Quicksilver, who, using his Thai bow skills to waste pretty much everyone in the mansion, manages to escape outside. While there, he fights a few more agents until he's eventually drugged via blow dart and loaded into the back of a van to be carried off for some good old-fashioned American torture followed by interrogation. Things aren't looking too good for Quicksilver, but quite miraculously, while in transit to wherever it is he's going to be tortured, just before he's about to be drugged again, he suddenly springs to life and manages to kick one of the agents through the windscreen, where he then gets run over by his own car. Hot damn. The resulting carnage causes the driver to lose control of the vehicle, where it swerves off the road, killing everyone on board except Quicksilver, who just about manages to scramble from the wreckage and drag himself into the middle of the road, where he's found by a passing ambulance and taken to a hospital unconscious. It's here that we then join Roddy Piper as Elmo, an ex-cop turned freelance detective who's on a stakeout to claim a bounty on a known dealer, solicitor and general pervert called Tiny. It doesn't take you long to realise that Elmo's a sarcastic, dry character who's here to crack wise and kick arse first and foremost. And when Tiny makes a run for it, a chase ensues that results in Tiny missing a few teeth and being unconscious, and Elmo collecting a bounty that keeps the doors of his detective agency open for another month. Elmo decides to head down to the hospital to keep an eye on things, and it's there that he meets Quicksilver. And after hearing a couple of interesting things around his appearance at the hospital, Elmo becomes curious and decides to turn detective on finding out just who he really is. Elmo sneaks into his room, takes some fingerprints and searches the room for any clues, but just before he's set to head out, a CIA agent disguised as a doctor enters the room and tries to make an assassination attempt. Elmo hides, and when he realises what's happening, he springs into action and takes out the assassin. It's at this point that he decides to keep watch over Quicksilver just to make sure he doesn't get another attempt made on him. A day or two passes, and eventually Quicksilver regains consciousness. Elmo rechristens him as John, as in John Doe, and the pair almost immediately fall out when Elmo's dry sarcasm comes up against John's cool, collected and no-nonsense attitude. It's revealed that John is suffering total amnesia. He can't remember a single thing except waking up in hospital and seeing Elmo. And when Elmo tries to take him out of the hospital and back to his office, John is very reluctant. After a lot of backing and forthing, Elmo eventually does manage to get John out of the hospital and takes him back to the office, where he begins to have flashbacks. The word quick seems to mean something really important. I wonder what that could be. And after Elmo fills him in on what he does, the pair decide to go for a run to try and help John rediscover himself. It's at this point we cut to the government, as it's revealed that John is actually an off-the-grid CIA agent. Prior to this bout of amnesia, he was shot at point-blank range while on a mission and somehow survived. The CIA forged his records to show he'd died and then sent him to recovery for 2 years before moving him on to a crack team of undercover, off-the-grid, unmarked agents. It's also revealed that they were the ones trying to bring him in for torturing, and that they know he's still alive and are monitoring the situation. Some time passes and Elmo offers John a chance to make some money hunting bounties with him. While out on a stakeout, John accidentally spills a bargoer's beer, infuriating the psychopathic giant. John makes a quick escape to the John, but when he comes back out, Long, Tall and Crazy is waiting for him and basically initiates a bar brawl. But this fight unlocks John's Tai Bo skills, and he beats the crap out of the psychopath, before helping Elmo finish the job. When the pair get back to the office, Elmo admits that he's looked for John in most of the military records that he has access to, but he can't find anything. He's also super impressed with the Tai Bo and asks if John can teach him some. John refuses, so Elmo starts a sparring match with him that ends up being a full-blown brawl where Elmo's secretary Mo ends up having to split them up and help them both heal up. The pair head out on another stakeout, but this time when they return to the office, they find 2 CIA goons waiting for them looking to take out John. The pair manage to get rid of the trouble, but they decide it's probably best to go into hiding. So they head to a friend's house to lie low. Little do they know that the CIA are trailing them. The agents try to take John again, and this time John manages to interrogate one of the agents, who reveals that he's a rogue CIA agent and that they're to bring him in a body bag because he knows something about shady dealings that the CIA and diplomats in Washington have been involved in. This revelation sets up the third act, in which John desperately tries to remember why he's the target of repeated assassination attempts, exactly what his role in the CIA was, and who he actually is as a person. All the while, Elmo backs him up while also trying to stop John from going too hard on trying to find out the whats and whys in order to avoid winding up dead. In a fairly by-the-numbers action flick that happens to have a half-decent cast, will John get his memories back? Will Elmo make this month's rent? And will the CIA learn not to mess with John and Elmo, the tough and the deadly? Right off the bat, the script for this film makes me hurt inside. Because while the secret agent with amnesia has to relearn he's a secret agent trope isn't the most original pitch in the world, there is scope to flesh that out into something pretty decent given a half-decent scriptwriter. And this film gets painfully close to doing the job really well. But unfortunately, it just falls short of being something noteworthy. And there are a few reasons for that. The first, and biggest issue, being that from around about halfway into the second act, the film gets into a bit of a vicious loop of Elmo and John going to a place, the CIA monitoring them, Elmo and John either learn something about John or the CIA try to take John, John learns from the experience and takes out the CIA members before moving on to the next place. Repeat. And that happens for a good 30 to 40 minutes of the 87-minute runtime. It's kind of quasi-padding because while you do learn something new each time, it really doesn't care much to shake up the formula with which you could learn these little bits. But this leads into the other major problem with the script, which is the structuring of the whole thing. The film pretty much front-loads you into knowing that John is a somewhat important person within the first 10 minutes, and by the 30-minute mark, the film's pretty much told you everything you need to know about who John is and why the CIA want him dead. The problem with that is that we then spend a not insignificant period of time following John and Elmo while they try to figure out who John is. And I feel it would have been much, much more effective to let the audience discover who John was at the same time that John did, rather than telling the audience beforehand and then having to put up with multiple 10-minute long interrogation fight scenes where agents slowly reveal the information we were already briefed to prior. Not only does it deflate the reveal, it makes it incredibly difficult to stay focused on the film because you know that John and Elmo are going to make it to the credits. So why bother paying attention to John punching a CIA agent for an overly long time in a pretty lackluster way, demanding to know what sandwich he liked in the CIA cafeteria before he got amnesia, when we as an audience have already been told that it was pastrami on rye? With there being so much padding in the second and third acts, the pacing is a bit all over the place. And I found it kind of hard to keep track of exactly what was happening in the third act just due to simply how much is said and how much is implied. It's like the film expects the audience to flip-flop between big dumb action movie and deeper meaning action film. You can spend 15 minutes watching Roddy Piper beat the crap out of a nightclub owner and not miss a thing, but miss a 10-second exchange between two CIA agents sat outside the bar at the very end of that 15-minute sequence, and the next 40 minutes will make 0 sense. I just think if they'd smoothed out the info dumping and kept it consistent and to a minimum across the runtime, it probably would have resulted in a much more enjoyable experience. Given this is an action film starring Taibo master Billy Blanks and renowned wrestler Roddy Piper, you'd expect the performances to be outshone by some first-class ass-kicking. But surprisingly, it's the other way around in this film. The film has tons of fight scenes to help pad out the runtime, but they're all pretty flat. They don't even try to mask the connection points more often than not, and if it wasn't for 1 or 2 acts of directional flair in the form of high-fall stunts, or a few shining moments from Blanks and Piper, which largely come about as a result of their own personalities and fighting styles, I'd be totally groaning and yawning through most of this. Honestly, you could lop out about 15 minutes of fight scenes from this script, and it really would improve the overall experience. By contrast, the dialogue here, while not exactly the best in the world, is vastly improved coming out of the mouths of Piper and Blanks. Despite the pair not really being all that into acting at that time, the charisma and character really pulls through here, and it just about saves the script from total collapse. I really didn't expect that from this film. And that tonal play of charismatic and dry played off against straight edge that's developed in this script is the element that really totally saves this film throughout the runtime. It sets an expectation to the audience, and in that regard, it delivers. This is one of the few instances where I think a somewhat mediocre script has ultimately been saved by the people performing it. The script was written by Otto C. Pozzo. He has just 2 writing credits, this film and Hidden Tiger, which I covered a very long time ago, and you can check out over on my YouTube channel, sneaky plug, sneaky plug. Other than that, he's not been seen since. The script was also co-written and directed by Steve Cohen. He has 15 directing credits and 2 writing credits. The majority of his directional work seems to be working with the piano man himself, Billy Joel, on a string of music videos, though he did also direct Martial Law. So I guess he has that going for him. Of his 2 writing credits, this is almost certainly his best known work, but given that this film was written by 2 people who'd only ever written one thing previously and directed by someone who'd mainly done music videos, I'm actually quite surprised that this has turned out quite as okay as it has. The direction of this movie kind of reeks of Gun for Hire vibes. It's definitely some competent direction, giving a clear and direct interpretation of the script on hand, but it absolutely fails to stand out in any way with any degree of distinction against any of the action movies released between around about 1987 to 1997. It's so bland visually, it literally could have been shot by anyone with directorial experience. And that total lack of any kind of clear vision, I feel actually quite hurts the film. Because when you combine it with the less than stellar fight scenes and the somewhat dry script, it just makes it feel all the more like a generic action movie when it could have been so much more than that. The cine doesn't fare much better either. While there are some nice moments for moody lighting dotted here and there, and the occasional low-angle slow-mo shot of people doing high falls that's always pretty decent, there's just nothing really here that lets the film level up. They occasionally break out a wide-angle lens, and on very rare occasion we might get a nice pan or tracking shot, but otherwise it's just generic static mid-wide to mid-close-up shots of people standing around in rooms and talking. Even the fight scenes don't really fare all that well, with the vast majority of them shot wide with only the occasional close-up to indicate a specific targeted attack. I'm a firm believer that the best fight sequences know when to hold back and play it wide, but don't shy away from quick cuts and getting up close and personal when it comes to the heavy-hitting sequences that are supposed to make your audience feel weight. And that use of closeness and quick cuts really just isn't present here. It all feels a bit too safe, which isn't helped by the badly masked no-contact shots. It's just not that solid of a piece of work. Performance-wise, well, Billy Blanks and Roddy Piper are good in this. They're great, in fact. Really great. Like, literally the best part of this movie great. Like, this is literally the only reason to watch the movie great. As in, if they weren't in this movie, the movie would be absolute garbage and would probably sit on the scale of some degree of unwatchable. They play off each other perfectly and have a really solid buddy cop relationship throughout. It's the classic formula of the goof and the straight man routine. But here, it works really well, and I had a blast watching the pair almost seemingly riff through the whole movie together. Piper in particular, for someone who can't be arsed at this point, really does seem to be enjoying himself. And, while not wanting to generalise, other than these two performances, the entire rest of the cast on this one may as well be balloons with smiley faces drawn on. With the one exception of Lisa Stahl as Mo, who's basically channeling Annie Potts in Ghostbusters for her role as Elmo's long-suffering secretary. She's the perfect foil to Elmo. She's sarcastic, no nonsense, she tells it as it is. Finally, the soundtrack. It's completely unmemorable. It's ultra-generic, ultra-processed, ultra-boring scoring that does nothing except exacerbate how dull this film is. A decent score can quite literally save a film from dying on its arse, and here we have just quite generic, stocky action-sounding tracks, rock-based with a hint of R&B, that pretty much just drift through the background of this movie totally unnoticed by anyone. It's a real letdown. And equally, while it may be an issue with my copy of the film, I noticed that some of the audio was pretty badly muffled on the dialogue front too. Whether that's just bad ADR or bad on-set recording, or whether it's just a case that my copy's messed up, I can't say for sure, but I counted at least 3 or 4 moments where the thing became pretty much inaudible for a few seconds at a time. So, yeah, not great. Tough and Deadly was released on VHS in the UK in 1996 by SGE Entertainment and Fox Guild. Initially it was released as a rental tape and then later that year as a full retail release. It made the leap to DVD in 2003 both as a solo release and later in various multi-film multi-pack sets by Hollywood DVD. No extras that I could see on my DVD copy, but it did come with a nice little coming soon trailer which ran before the DVD menu boots up, showing some rather interesting movies that Hollywood DVD had licensed for the time. I will be checking some of those out. And other than that, it looks like this was the last time this movie got released. Does it deserve the Blu-ray treatment? In my opinion, honestly, probably not. If it wasn't for the casting, Tough and Deadly would be an absolute snorefest. In almost every area of the filmmaking process, it could not be any more generic, basic, or bland. And while the cast and performances do go a long way to help save the film from being totally dull, this is ultimately a nice-to-watch movie and definitely not a need-to-watch movie. There are way better films out there that handle this kind of stuff. If you're big on Blanks or Piper, then you'll probably really dig this one. But otherwise, been there, done that.